Hi, and welcome to question 10 of the 2023 Junior Cert Higher Level paper. So question 10 is a fairly long one, okay? And in this, we are dealing with tax, okay? So it's always worth having a decent understanding of the basics. So you earn a certain amount of income called your gross income. You pay income tax on that. You might pay PRSI, pay-related social insurance. You pay USC, Universal Social Charge, and they are taken off your gross income, and you get your net income, okay, and the tax paid. You also get a tax credit depending on your circumstances, and that tax credit is taken from the tax owed. So your net income is your income after tax minus the tax credit. So an understanding of that will help understand what these questions are asking. Now, this first one is A and B marked together for 15 marks, so this is good. And let's read through. Michelle must pay universal social charge on all of her gross income. The income bands and rates of USC that Michelle must pay are given in the table below. So for the first €12,012, she pays at 1.5%. Then the next 5,564, she pays a higher rate of 3.5%. And then anything above 17,576, she pays at 7%. So that's an idea of it's a social thing of the more you earn, the more tax you pay. There's some word for it, I can't think of it right now. So Michelle pays USC at all three rates. And part A is asking, find the amount of USC that she must pay at each of the first two rates at 1.5% and 3.5%. So the way to get a percentage is to multiply by the percent. So if she is paying 1.5% of this amount, that's our first calculation. Okay, multiply by 1.5%. Now that's the same thing as multiplying that by 1.5 over 100, okay, which is the same thing as multiplying that by 0.015. Okay, so it doesn't matter how you do it. Now my calculator should be here. Okay, it's not as big as I'd like it to be. So if I went, was it 2012, 12,012, 12012. So I can multiply that by 1.5, and then the percentage button on this calculator is on the second function. That gives me an answer of now 90. I'm going to change that to a decimal. 180 and 18 cents. Okay. Now, if I'd done the same thing with 12012 times 1.5 over 100, I should get the same number. And we did. Or 12012 multiply by, what was it, 0.015, gives me the same number. So again, like we had in the previous question, you're representing the same thing in different forms. Now with the calculator, using the percentage sign just seems to make sense. But either way, that's how much she pays USC on the first 12,000. Now the next 5,564, she pays at 3.5%. So that number should be 5564 times 3.5%. That gives me a decimal answer of 194. I think it was 74 cents. Yeah, 0.74. Okay, now you're asked to find the amount of she must pay. That probably is the answer. To be honest, I'd probably add them together just to be sure. Let me try reread it. She must pay at each of the first two rates. It would normally say a total amount of USC, but look, I still would add them, and you'd end up with the marking scheme. Actually, I didn't do the marking scheme, so it must be I would have used the marking scheme for the notes, so it must have been a requirement from the marking scheme. So that actually looks like the answers. But again, I would still do it because in case I'm misinterpreting the way it's phrased. Now, part B is Michelle's gross income is X. Okay, so you could write that down. Okay, this probably wouldn't qualify for an attempt, but just showing that you have knowledge or helping you. Michelle pays a total of 5% of her gross income in USC. Write an expression in terms of X for the total amount of money that Michelle pays in USC. Okay, Do we know her gross income? Now this is relatively tricky, okay, but the total USC would be equal to, now if you wanted to do it out in total, you could just go, like, it's 180.18. That's the first 12,000 plus the 194.74. Okay, now you could probably add them together or whatever. Combine them. Plus, now she pays her total amount of money. Okay, you want to use X. Okay, so it's X. I'll put brackets around it. Take away. So X is her total salary. Let's say. Okay. You're taking away the 12,012 because that's already been accounted for here. You're taking away the 5564, which is accounted for here. Now, whatever that number is, so let's say she earned 40,000, take away the 12,000, take away the 5,000, that 23,000, whatever it is, would be paying at 7%. Okay, so this expression here in the brackets represents that amount, and that's multiplied by 7%. Now you could tidy it up. Okay, that's the answer I've done out. I've done out a bit more, whatever. That's the calculation for the 180. That's the 174, whatever it is, and that's the difference in her salary. So we're probably going to have to use that later on to do solving. But that's tricky enough because a lot of people struggle to put it down into an expression, but you're kind of building it up. Okay, and if you understand the principle behind it, it's more achievable. Okay, so we'll move on then to part C. So it's saying on the answer here to find the value of X. So the total USC is equal to, if there was the 180.18 plus the, oh wait, the page won't change. And this is the 19, damn it, it looks it up. 197.74, 197.74, plus we had the X minus the 12,012 minus the 5564, which I'll just double check, 5564, and that's times 7%. I probably could close that into bigger brackets. So that's going to be a calculation of its own. Now I'm going to jump across to the answer that I have done out in the notes because it's a bit tidier. So where we left off was here. Okay, that was actually up here, and it's expressed in a slightly different way. So that's the 180.18, that's the 197, and that was our bigger calculation. Now that can be combined together. These two numbers can combine together to give this number. Okay, and 7% is the same thing as 0.07. Remember, 7% means 7 over 100. Okay, which is in decimal the same thing as 0.07. So these are all the exact same number. Okay. Then we're going to combine these two numbers together. And I could have done that from before, but whatever. And then multiply the 0.07 by x, I get 0.07x. The 0.07 by 17576, I got, now it's a negative number, I got minus 1,230 and 32 cents. Now, if you notice here, this is an equation of two unknowns, okay? The total USC and our value of X. So we can't solve an equation of two unknowns. So we need to be a little bit kind of smarter about this. And it's entirely possible that a few people would get like absolutely stuck here. And when I did this the first time, I was like, this took me longer than I would like to admit to kind of go, I was told information. And I was told information back at the beginning. That's why I put this in here. We're told that 5% of her gross income is what she pays in USC. Okay, now X is her gross income. So 5% of X is the same thing as, remember, 5% is the same thing as 5 over 100, which is the same thing as 0.05. So it's the same thing as 0.05x. So I can replace the total USC with that 0.05x. Now I do it a bit down, I just do a bit of tidying up here. I'm combining these two numbers together, okay, and I get the 0.07x and the minus 855.4. So this has an x value here, but when I bring in that the total USC is the same thing as 0.5x, well, then I get an expression, and it's an expression showing only one unknown. Like x appears there twice. I'm using a new tablet and it's not playing ball. X appears here and here, but it's the same unknown. So this is an equation of one unknown, which is solvable. Okay, and that's always something you should be looking at. If there's more than one unknowns, for example, x plus y is equal to 10, that is never solvable. You can rearrange it, but you can never solve. So an equation of one unknown is solvable, and you can use algebra to get to a simpler version of it, which hopefully solves it. Okay, we're going to try to do that now. And to get into that situation, I want all the x's on one side. And typically, you want the larger x on one side. Now, for simplicity, I'm going to just take away from the 0.05 x. I want to get rid of that, so I'm going to take 0.05x away from it. I'm allowed to do whatever I want to in the equation, so I can take away that. Okay, now I'm only incorrect if I don't do that to both sides. What's going to happen is that this and this are going to cancel. This and this are going to combine together. Now I've done that. I've kind of tried to illustrate that here in a different color. Now at the same time, I want to get rid of the 855. I want to move it to the other side. And some people will just move it across and change the sign. That's totally cool. But if I want to get rid of the negative 855.4, I could add 855.4 to it. Now, if I do that to one side, I have to do that exact same thing to everything on the far side. And that's what I've tried to illustrate here. So I've done two things within the same step, which I don't normally like to do, but I was running out of page, so I said I just better tighten it up. Now, when I do all those calculations, 0.05x, take away 0.05x, they're gone. Okay, that's what I wanted to happen. On the far side, 0.07x minus 0.05x, it's really just 0.07 take away 0.05. That's 0.2x. Now, on the other side, the 855 and the negative 855, they're going to cancel out. That's 0. But on the far side, the 855 has nothing to add it to, so it stays the same. So we end up with this statement, much simpler. Now, some will bring the 0.02 across and divide, and that's, again, the same strategy, just a different way of expressing it. What I'm doing here is, if I want to get rid of something, the easiest way to do it, so the 0.02, the easiest way to get rid of that is to divide the 0.02 by 0.02. Anything divided by itself will always become 1. Now, if I do it to one side, I have to do it to everything on the far side. Now, in this case, that's fairly handy. So 855.4 divided by 0.02, there'll be a lot of them. I end up with around, well, not around, I end up with 42,270 euro. Now, I'd always pass this through the BS test. Does that feel like a reasonable income? Like if the answer was like 500,000, I'd be like, that's not the average person. Okay. 42,000 is in and around the average industrial wage. Okay. Now, in saying that, the average industrial wage doesn't mean that everybody earns that. In fact, it means that 50% of the people earn that, and that can be skewed in statistics by the fact that some people earn an awful lot. So most people are not on 42,270. Like some are on way more than that, and that kind of drags the average, or more correctly, drags the mean towards the higher number, which can be a way of using statistics to try to fool us to a certain extent. And one of the reasons why we study statistics is to understand when statistics are being used to make us think things are different than how they are in reality. Okay, so that's part 10C, so a fairly tricky one, but like all these questions, you're hopefully going to be going for the attempt. So even rewriting the previous answer here would have gotten you the low partial. Manipulating that down to a point probably would have got you maybe up to the high partial of 4, although they might have wanted this statement for the high partial. Yeah, probably would have wanted that statement. Oh, actually, that's the end of question 10. Okay, I thought it was longer. So as always, if you want to copy these notes, send me an email at shanetroy@gmail.com. Like and subscribe to get access to more playlists, and see you on question 11.